fourth general meeting. Hope you guys are having a good time at school, getting through those midterms. Some club updates. We're still going on with the logo competition, so please send in your designs if you want to enter for a chance to get your merch for free if you guys win. We've seen some really cool designs, so keep on coming with that. The deadline is November 16th. Point system, just a reminder, you guys all received a point for coming to this meeting. And prizes, these are the prizes that we have so far: shirts, hats, pens, and hoodies. These are what they're going to look like. I think for the crew neck, we also have like a sweater. It looks the same, but just different like material on the inside. And then for the hoodie, we do have a new color. It's going to be blue this year, or this semester. And then I think we still have some black ones too, if you prefer the black ones. And then we have pens and hats. So cool way to rep the club, rep the profession that you guys are passionate about and going into. Next, some new volunteer opportunities. Lots of new ones. Access to Rehab was from a little before, but they're still looking for some interns. Leaps and Bounds, cool place to work with horses and with children as a PT or OT assistant there. Some outpatient clinics for physical therapy, San Gabriel Valley. Outpatient clinic for PT, Gary M. Souza PT. This is right off, I think, the 57, I think. If you worked or had Dr. Joe as a teacher, he has a lot of like connections here. So this is a really cool place to go to. They do like workers comp PT there. So it's pretty unique. And one of the PTs also does research for like USC. So if you're interested in getting into research, you could ask about that there. And inpatient clinic for PTOT at Pomona Valley Hospital. Applications start October 1st. And also, I did just get an email from Casa Colina. They're emailing me about like my volunteer application I did like I think before COVID started. So I think they're bringing in some more volunteer opportunities at Casa Colina. So look into that as well. Their orientation is sometime in October, I believe. But yeah, just reach out to them, look on their website, call them, and they're pretty good about getting back once they have everything going. All right. Reminder, the next general meeting is going to be next week with another PT student from, I believe, Chapman. Same time, 12 to 1 p.m. And this is our social media stuff. If you guys haven't seen it, follow Instagram, check out our website. The GroupMe is super helpful if you have classes or if you have volunteer opportunities. And the Gmail, if you haven't been receiving emails from us and you are a paid member, let us know and we'll resend it. Sometimes the Outlook email doesn't like Gmail, so we'll like block our messages or put it in spam. So check there first and then let us know if we need to send it to you again, or I'll send it to you personally through my Outlook. Alrighty, let's see. Go on to the next one. There we go. All right, without further ado, I'm going to introduce Mr. Andre Wu, a doctor of occupational therapy. Thank you for coming, and right now you have the floor to talk about your profession and stuff and your journey.
Awesome. Thank you, Malcolm. And thank you, Eliza, for inviting me to this talk. I'll try to make it as interesting as I can. Sometimes it can be a little bit boring just talking about yourself. So just a little bit of a background. And so I actually got into OT in a pretty kind of unique way. So I was a business major in undergrad. I graduated with a business degree, but I graduated during a pretty bad time. It was during the 2008 recession, 0809, the housing market recession. So I had no job. And like you grow up like most of us that are in college, I guess, like my parents just always told me like, oh, go to school, get a degree and then get a job. And once I did all those things, there were no jobs for me. So I was pretty disappointed. I actually was very kind of upset. Uh, I guess at the world. I was like, what the heck is going on? But one thing led to another. I eventually got a job at a adult daycare center. I worked with the elderly for about a year and a half, 2 years, and that's where I got introduced to OT. So the occupational therapist there was a friend of a friend, and he explained to me what OT was, and I was like, oh, this is pretty interesting. I knew I had to go back to school to get to pursue a higher degree, since business, like a bachelor in business, didn't really get me anywhere. And I contemplated MBA, but I was like, yeah, I think I need to change my field. So I was really between OT and PT. Those were my two choices, and I ended up choosing OT because the prereqs were way shorter than the PT program. Just because I was a business major, I had a lot of psych and sociology classes under my belt. So I was like, you know what? I'm just gonna apply for OT. Who cares? It kind of seems about the same, and that's usually like right the big misconception is like, oh, isn't PTOT kind of similar? That's usually what people ask me, or they ask me like, well, what does an occupational therapist do? Since physical therapist is better quote unquote branded, people know what PTs do usually. So, um, I was still working full time. I took my prereqs at night at UCLA Extension and at GCC, and then I took my GREs. I went through the whole process, and through one way or another, luckily I got into USC. So I got into USC 2012. I graduated from their program with their master's in 2014, and I chose to do my OTD for very specific reasons, and I'll cover that in a little bit, in 2015. So I've been working at Cedar Sinai since 2015. I've been there for the past 6 years now. I've been a therapist for 7. So, and I specialize in hand therapy. So that's my niche, right? Um, so going back to my OTD, because some of you guys might actually have that question, or trust me, if you guys haven't thought about doing an OTD, your schools will heavily um, try to get you to do it, just because obviously it's more money for them. That's where also the profession is leading. But there are pros and cons to doing OTD, and let me cover that really quick. So the reason why I wanted to do an OTD was, um, uh, and obviously for those interested in physical therapy, you guys already come out with a DPT, right? So OT right now, entry level is just a master's, but they're pushing other students to get their doctorate. One of the reasons is really because of physical therapy, because PTs come out with DPTs, and OTs always have like the poor cousin syndrome against PTs. So they're like, oh, we want to not compete, but it's like, you'll see when you're in management, you see a lot of PTs, but sometimes you see OTs. And I think that the OTD or the DPT helps you sit on those tables, because they talk about leadership, so on and so forth, which I think is a bunch of junk. But that's, the in a higher position like that, education is also looked at, and they consider that, right? So the reason why I chose to do my OTD was because I knew I wanted to get into hand therapy. And in the state of California, as a hand therapist and as an occupational therapist, you need further certifications. You need your HTC, which stands for hand therapy certification, and then you need your PAM certification, which is the physical agent modality certification. Again, for some reason, PTs don't need those things, OTs do. So knowing that, I needed to study a little bit more and get um, those certifications before I got myself into the job market, because I knew that if I applied to a job, they would ask me as a hand therapist, right? As a pursuing hand therapist, they'll be like, do you have your HTC and your PAM certifications? So I got those certifications while I was at doing my OTD, because they placed you in a residency and you work as a full-time therapist technically, and you can rack up your hours. So that process, you just come and ask me if you're interested. you have to rack up hours, hands-on hours, and then you also have to do an educational portion that I did at USC. So since then, I've been working. So I got my OTD, and that's one of the reasons why I did it, to get my HTC and my PAMS, and also because I wanted to teach. So I've been interested in becoming a professor, academia, and currently I am an adjunct professor at USC, teaching the same class I took as a student. So it's kind of funny how it's like full circle, right? Like I took the class and now I'm instructing the class. So it's a pretty neat kind of accomplishment and experience. I'm not very like this is gonna be my second semester teaching the class next spring, but I love it. That's why I love doing these talks, because I think students bring a breath of fresh air. I think even though I've been only practicing for 7 years, like I was talking to my friend about this, like it's hard to imagine that only 1/4 of my career has passed, right? If you're gonna work about 30 years, it's been 7 years that I've been working. I'm like, can I really do this for another 21 years? And I'm like, I don't know if I can. Even though I love what I do, it's like it's kind of hard to imagine yourself doing something for 30 years. So I'm like, I'm just keeping my options open. If I want to go into, a professor career later, then I can. So, or if I want to keep, doing this full time, part time kind of bouncing. That's what I do. I'm a full time clinician, and I'm a part time professor. That ends up working really well, at least for me right now. So that's why I got my OTD. So and again, if you guys have more questions about possible OTDs later for those who are pursuing occupational therapy, I'll be more than happy talking about that. So let me just kind of briefly explain what I do. So again, I said I'm a hand therapist. I work at Cedars-Sinai Outpatient Rehab Clinic, and I specialize in hand rehab. So if you have a shoulder injury all the way to your fingertips, any sort of surgery, repetitive strain injuries, carpal tunnel release, fracture. We feel like mostly ortho fractures, right? So wrist fracture, hand fractures, elbow fractures. But if you have repetitive strain, like tennis elbow, tendonitis, Duchenne veins, you'll be coming to me for therapy. So I work very closely with the doctors, and that's something that is kind of interesting. Actually, it's another skill that you kind of have to learn on top, because when you work especially in an ortho field like this, you have you have the surgeons, right? And they think they rule the world. So it's kind of an interesting dynamic, right? Because um, they think they are, the shiz, and then most of them do actually. And then you have your therapist, and if something goes wrong, they blame the therapist. So managing that relationship is something quite interesting, and it's like another social skill that you have to develop. But I find it fun. Um, and obviously, if anybody here, parents are orthosurgeons, they're great. It's just that sometimes they have this air of like, oh, I'm superior here. Some of the doctors are actually awesome. They actually defer to us, because their niche is doing surgery, right? So if they don't know anything about therapy, they'll come and ask us. The difficult doctors are the ones that think they know about therapy, and they tell you what to do, and you go like, that's not really the right thing to do. So it's really a life skill, a social skill, to manage that and be like, doc, I was thinking maybe we should do X, Y, and Z instead of ABC, without getting them super offended, because they can get quite offended. And then if you burn bridges in any field, especially in such niche field that I work in hand therapy, then it could be problematic later. And then we can maybe talk a little bit more about that. So that's what I do. I work at Cedars. I do 3/12s. So I work 3 days, 12 hours a day. I love it because it frees me up for 2 days. So those 2 days, usually I either do part-time work at another hand clinic, or I teach. And right now I'm looking into home health, just to kind of keep things, a little bit more interesting. Again, thinking that I have to do this for another 21 years is kind of daunting. So just trying to open up diversify your portfolio, right? That's what they say, to invest, diversify your portfolio. Don't put all your eggs in one basket, and see where life takes you, essentially. So that's what I'm doing. I guess something more personal. I have a 2-year-old son. I'm married, so life is crazy. You know, my baby is absolutely a hurricane. He tears through things. So it's really fun, but at the same time I appreciate the fact that I have these two days off, so I can build my relationship with him. Because when I work 12 hours, I don't get to see him sometimes, because I leave the house at 6. I can come home around 7:30, 8, and depending what time he goes down, I don't see him in a day. So that can be that's also another interesting thing about balancing this whole work life balance that we talk about, especially in OT school. So yeah, that's kind of what I had to do for a little bit of intro. And I always appreciated more like the Q&As more than anything. So in case you guys want to ask me any specific questions, like you guys can. But I'm gonna leave the floor. And Malcolm, I'm kind of gonna defer to you again and see what you want me to talk about. If there's anything more specific, and then if you guys just want to open up to Q&As, I'll be more than happy to answer.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you for the intro. That's actually very interesting. But yeah, we can open up to Q&As for right now. Because you said a lot of interesting stuff, especially about the OT doctorate stuff. Because that's a relatively new thing that we're still learning about here at Pomoto with the club and everything. But yeah, anyone have any questions, just put in the chat, or you could unmute and ask away.
Yeah, great questions, Jacqueline. So let's go back to the whole therapy. Okay? So the OTD and the HTC and the PAM. So all my classmates, they had no problem finding a job wherever they wanted to find. So in occupational therapy, usually you do pediatrics. That's those are the popular ones, right? So pediatrics, physical rehab, those are the two big ones. And then very few people go into mental health, and very few people go into something more specialized like I did. Some people do swallowing, right? Some people get their swallowing stuff. So certification that you also have to get it to the state of California. But no problem finding a job. But like I said, in hand therapy, you need your HTC and your PAMS. You don't have to have it, but that is your bargaining point, right? Especially as a new therapist, people are going to be asking you. And I knew it, they were going to ask me. So I go and I interview at Cedars, which was like super lucky. I was super lucky to get this opportunity. And the first question they asked was, do you have your HTC PAMS? And I was like, yes, I do. So doing my OTD was very kind of um, meaningful for that, because that's how I got my HTC and my PAMS. And honestly, I am gonna die at Cedars. Like I literally mean that. Like that's gonna be a job I want to hold on to until I am like ready to retire or I die in the hospital, because it's such a great job. I have really good benefits. The pay is very, very competitive, and there's no reason to leave that clinic unless something happens, which I had a coworker leave, which was very unfortunate. And but you know, whatever. It's a great place to work at. So um, if you guys are PTs and OTs, you have no problem finding a job. Honestly, you might start in a place that might not be ideal for you, right? The commute might be a little bit longer. You might not work in a hospital setting. You might work in a private clinic, whatever. But it's great. It's a great, great, great field, and I think I'm so excited when people tell me that that's what they're pursuing, because it's freaking amazing. Like you guys will not regret being OTs and PTs, and it's really meaningful. Like you really help people out. Um, regardless opportunity, regardless which field you do. So it's very meaningful, especially in the beginning. You like I remember walking out of my work with my first paycheck, and I was like, whoa, I'm getting paid to do this. This is pretty awesome. Like I can do this for the rest of my life. And obviously 7 years later, I'm contemplating if I can do this for another 21. So things definitely changed along the process. But yeah, and then also one thing that is interesting about the OTD that people kind of get concerned is because you have to pay for that, right? It's another year schooling. But usually OTDs, because of your residency, they give you a stipend or you bargain like your salary. So fun fact, I was getting paid a stipend of $1,000 a month, which is absolutely peanuts, right? For the amount of work that you're doing. But I used that money to buy my wife her engagement ring. So our engagement ring, I guess, right? So if it wasn't for the OTD, I wouldn't have been able to buy her a ring. And it wasn't, but as a broke master's doctorate program student, that was very handy, right? That was a lot of money. So that's how I got to, um, I guess, propose to my wife. It was through the OTD stipend money. So I know that a lot of times, so people ask like, man, should I, and am I going to be able to like work and do my life and grow in whatever areas? Like you can totally do it. We had people that were in their 40s coming back to school. We had people straight out of their bachelor program. I obviously took 2 years off, and then I no 3 years off because I was 1 year unemployed. I worked for 2 years, so I went back to school. And you can totally do it. And I'd say usually like the third best decision of my life was going to OT school. Like I absolutely loved going to OT school. It was so fun. Hopefully by the time you guys are there, this damn pandemic is over. Um, and you guys can go back to class and enjoy potlucks, because that was one of the best things about school, was going to potlucks and just stuffing our faces with great food every once in a while. So yeah. Yeah, so what happens is you are gonna be kind of working. So sorry, Shannon Kim. So technically as an OTD, as a doctor student, you're gonna be working technically, because you have to do, at least for OT school, you have to do like a capstone, and you usually do it on the work that you do, right? So a capstone would be like almost like kind of like your PhD, like you're positioning, you're presenting your research that you did as a PhD student. But as an OTD or as a DPT, I'm assuming in DPT program you go through also a residency and you have to work. So as an OTD student, you're working and you're getting paid. So um, I had a classmate that she got her residency at a different place, and she was getting paid. She wasn't getting a stipend. She was getting paid more than what I was getting paid technically. And so she was working and then going to school. So for OT school, usually the capstone, or at least at USC, it's like you take one class a semester or something like that. It's really, it's really, I don't want to like, say it wasn't worth it, because it was worth it. Like, because I got my OTD, I get to teach, and I got my HTC in PEMS, and then I got my job at Cedars, right? But educationally speaking, you don't really learn anything different, to be honest. It's like you go through leadership classes, and it's like, I think it's a bunch of waste of time, at least for USC. Don't tell this to USC. Oh, actually, they know. I told them. I said, look, you don't have to do this. Like I went through panels at USC. I'll be like, you guys don't have to do this. This is just a waste of time, unless you have further aspirations. For the doctorate degree rather than the educational portion of it. But you can definitely work. You can manage it, and you should be working. If you're an OTD student, you're gonna be working regardless, one way or another, and you're gonna have to um, negotiate, which is a great skill to learn, guys. Guys, just learn how to negotiate pay, because that's a huge thing too. Like right out of the gate, they're gonna try to lowball you like always. Just learn that skill like right now. If you guys don't feel comfortable asking for more money, it's your labor. Like you are putting your body through the ground to get paid. So y'all better get paid, because it's very important. Okay. So hopefully that answers the question. All right. So Alejandra asks, what kind of strategies or methods are usually done within hand therapy? So great question. Uh, so um, one thing that I love about OT is that OT is very, like, you can get very creative, right? That's usually what we say, right? Oh, you can use the occupations as a means. You guys are gonna read that paper by Julie McLaughlin Gray. She's like one of my professors. She was one of my professors at USC. Occupations as means and the occupation as ends, right? So the end result is to get the patient to do what they used to do, and you use the occupation as a mean to get there, right? It's just that you have to downgrade it. So, for example, if you play basketball, if the goal is to get the patient to play basketball, you have to teach them essentially, and they have a broken wrist, how to bounce the ball first, and then to shoot the ball, and then to play more contact sports, right? So you're using these little steps to get them to do the full, which is like, honestly, it's kind of common sense, right? Obviously, if you want to play basketball, you got to get them to shoot the ball and dribble the ball eventually, right? But in hand therapy, one thing that I love about hand therapy is that it's not this like crazy, oh, free flow kind of thing. Like hand therapy is very structured too. It gives me a lot of structure, and I can get creative on top of that. Because let's say you have a fractured wrist, right? You have a protocol. If you go through surgery and you have an internal fixator, which is like a metal plate in your wrist, you have to be casted for about 3 weeks. And after 3 weeks, you can begin active range of motion. And then about 6 weeks, you can start passive range of motion. And then week 8 to 9, you can start strengthening. So if my goal is to get this patient to play basketball, obviously I can't put him or her to dribble a ball at week 3 right out of the cast. First, because they're going to be in pain. Two, because it's going to be dangerous. And eventually, when they're quote unquote allowed to, they are not even going to be able to dribble the ball, honestly, because they might have the range of motion, but they don't have the strength. So they can develop tendonitis and something like that. So um, in hand therapy, you use a lot of protocols, which is something that it gives you some structure, but you can deviate from it depending on how well the patient is doing. Obviously, if a patient is an 18-year-old, guy that broke his wrist, and on the same day I see and another patient that is a 75-year-old grandma, and they had the same injury, the same method, the same surgeon, the same day of surgery, the rehab is going to look very, very different, right? Because um, one is 18, one is 75. So you can use this protocol, but some of these patients might be ahead of the protocol, and some other patients might be behind the protocol, if that makes sense. So there are a lot of protocols that we can use. We usually do a lot of strengthening. I do a lot of soft tissue mob. So a lot of I work a lot on the soft tissue, like rather than just working on like the biomechanical wrist active range of motion per se. I'm doing a lot of soft tissue mob too, because your ligaments get tight, right? And then your tendons can get tight. You might have tight muscles. So I'm looking at this whole picture and seeing what issues they might have to first get them to full range of motion and then get them to strengthening, right? Um, there's no point of strengthening a person that has 30-30 range of motion, because you might be the strongest person 30-30 range of motion, but if you don't have the range of motion, dude, you can't do anything. You can't open a door, right? You can't push yourself off the chair per se. um, so just to kind of keep that in mind. So that's usually what I do in hand therapy, and it's amazing. Like hand therapy is awesome. I love it, and I get to sit down, dude. I get paid to sit down. You know what I'm saying? Like, and talk to patients. That's usually what I do. Like, we joke around. We say 90% of hand therapy is mental health. Like, you're just talking to the patient, and that's very true. The patient comes in very distraught and distressed, right? Imagine you guys broke your wrist, and then now the doctor says, okay, you can't do anything for the next 3 to 6 months. Like, I'll go crazy. So they come in very stressed and very almost depressed sometimes. So I do a lot of talking. And so if you're a total introvert, I actually am. I'm a total introvert. So by the end of work, I am completely exhausted. Like, I don't even want to see my wife's face, because I'm so tired. I'm like, ugh, I just don't want to talk to people. I don't want to see people. But that's how much it kind of takes out of you. It's like it's a lot of talking, and 10% is really the manual. Like it's you're doing a lot of talking, and but I love it because I get to meet a lot of people. I have some really cool stories of some patients that were really meaningful, and I have some really neat stories. So if you have time, maybe I'll tell you guys one encounter that I had that it was really cool. So hopefully that answers your question, um, Alejandro. So okay, so I have another one. I s- I hope I'm saying this right. Deva Silva. Are you Brazilian by the way? Silva Moreira could be Brazilian. I'm Brazilian by the way. I was born and raised in Brazil. So this sounds like almost like a Brazilian name. So
Oh, hi. I'm from Chile, South America, but I'm Portuguese and Spanish.
got
Can you
it.
hear me?
Okay,
Yeah.
that's awesome. So I have a fellow
That's
South
cool that you're
American here.
Brazilian. Cool.
Yeah. So let yeah. So let me. Oh, sorry. Oh, can you guys hear me? Okay. My internet can get kind of spotty. Okay,
Yeah,
cool.
we can
So
hear
you
you.
guys are totally laggy, so I'm just gonna keep going. Okay. Okay, cool. So, the question that Diva asked was overall, um, would you recommend the OTD program versus the masters? I understand by 2027 it's required practice. Is that significant? Great question. Okay, so I think it all depends, honestly. Because, dude, I have a coworker that she has her bachelor's still. She's like a dinosaur. She graduated like a long time ago. So like she doesn't have her master's and she gets paid more than I do because she has the experience, right? So it was very interesting. When I first started at Cedars, I was the only one with an OTD. So I was the 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 therapist with the highest level of education, but I was the getting paid the least, obviously, just because I'm the newest therapy, right? I'm the least experienced. So it kind of really depends on what your goals are. If you want to be in management, there's no way around it. You're gonna have to get your OTD eventually, right? The OTD will just open up new doors for you. But if you say, you know what, dude, I don't care about management. I just want to work with kids. I'm cool with that. If anything, I'll just open my practice, whatever. Then do your masters are gonna be fine. Do you get paid more because of your OTD? I don't think you do, at least by now. Um, so it doesn't really make that much of a difference in pay. But again, but these higher opportunities, these more managerial opportunities will come with a higher pay, right? And the OTD will allow you to sit on those tables essentially. So you might not need it, but it all depends. Home health for sure, no need for an OTD, honestly, if you want to do home health. And home health honestly you get paid bank, dude. Like you get paid a lot of money doing home health. It's just you feel comfortable going to people's homes, and you have to drive around, essentially, right? But hourly speaking, you get paid a lot. You can really, again, if you can, negotiate to get paid like $100 an hour, right? $100 a visit per se. So, yeah. Uh, uh, schools, I don't know if you get paid more, but it might help you be more on like again a lead therapist, right? Having an OTD later on in life, right? Hospital, again, but if you want to be a manager, that can help. And rehab centers, again, if you want to be in management position. So it all depends what your goals are. If you guys are, dude, I have therapists that are happy working as therapists, and honestly, like I'm contemplating too. Like I've always thought I wanted to get into management, right? Hence my background in business management. But like I look at their lifestyle, like I don't know if you guys remember because you guys are just a little younger than I am. When President Obama first became president, like Google his picture when he first became a president, and by the time he left, like it looked like he aged 20 in 8 years, right? That's usually that's what happened to my manager. He like came in as this like stud looking dude. He's been like 3 years in management. He looks like a grandpa at this point, right? And I'm like, do I really want to be in management? Because it's so stressful. And like I said, dude, like the greatest thing about my job is I go in, I see my patients, and after I'm done with my patients, I just, I wash my hands, I dust myself off and I go home and I forget about work. I'm thinking about my next tea time to go play golf the following day. But management, bro, you have to be like,
I'm actually at the driving range right now.
oh, that's awesome. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
amazing. So I'm playing tomorrow. So just
Cool.
FYI. So um that's the thing. It's like, dude, I'm texting him at 4 in the morning when I'm calling out sick, right? And he has sent out an email letting them know that I'm not gonna be at work. So do I really want the lifestyle just to get paid 50,000 more bucks an hour? I know that no, a year. I know, like, oh dang, it's a lot of money. But again, it's like, where are you in life? What are your goals? Obviously, more money, more better, right? But the whole work-life balance, man. If if I can't play my golf, I'll go crazy. So I don't know. I don't know if I want to do that. But at the same time, I have a mortgage to pay, and I have a son to take care of. So these are some questions, maybe that you might want to ask. So okay, says my internet is. I'm gonna keep answering these questions and see if it helps. Okay. All right. So the next question that Shannon asks is it possible to do your field work at a clinic overseas? That's hard to answer. I don't know anybody that did that. I would actually highly discourage you to do that because you can get hired in the clinics that you do your field work, right? So again, it's connections that you're building around here. So if you want to move to Phoenix, Arizona, then tell your field work coordinator that you want to be placed in an Arizona clinic, right, in a Phoenix clinic. But if you plan to stay in California or locally, just do your field work around here, just because that helps you build connections. You might not get a job in this clinic, but they might know somebody that knows someone else that can refer you to that, right? A lot of people actually got their jobs right after the program because they were really good field work students. So I would encourage you to do your field work here. Um, but I get it, like, overseas, and you like, that's the only time you can go travel before. And I tell you honestly, right now, do travel. Like, I know it's like, oh, we're in the middle of pandemic, dude, who cares, just go travel. Like, if you guys are vaccinated, just go travel, just do things that you can't do later, because you won't be able to do those things later. You know what I'm saying? Like, enjoy life now, go to the golf range. Like, dude, I played so much golf in OT school. So I'm happy. I don't know who said that it was at the range, but keep going to the range, keep playing golf. If you guys are into dancing, go to your dance classes. If you're into cooking, go cooking. Because once you start working, man, it's just that grind. So, I know you guys are still undergrads, but that's why I said, like, the third best decision of my life was going to OT school, and it was amazing. Like, I freaking loved OT school. So enjoy your time in school still. I know it sucks, like, you guys, it looks like some of you guys are in public spaces, so you have to wear your mask, which, it's not a big deal. But again, we are going through a pandemic. But I don't know, Pfizer CEO said hopefully we'll be done by next year. I don't believe anything they say anymore, but we'll see how it goes. So hopefully, knock on wood, so again, you guys could have your potlucks in school, which is amazing. So yes. So hopefully to answer your question, Shannon. So Mia asks, did you have to take the hand therapy courses, and how physically demanding is your job? Yeah, so you should take hand classes if your university. So USC offers you so again, I said the HTC and the PAM certification. You need both an educational portion and a hands-on portion, right? Educational portion, and then as a licensed therapist, you have to get the hands-on portion. That's why the OTD is important, because the OTD, you are going through the OTD program as a licensed therapist already. So I was going through an educational portion, and I was being mentored in a hand clinic through my OTD program, and I was getting my hours for the HTC and PAMS, right? So you should definitely take hand courses. If your school does not provide, because I have a student from Stanbridge that had no hand classes, and I was like, Oh, and also someone from I just had a level 2 student. She was great, but she was from San Jose State. Um, she said she had no hand classes, which I was like, ooh, that's kind of interesting, right? So if you're interested, so in any, let's say in any field, let's say you're interested in one field and your school doesn't give you the educational portion, I would honestly say look into any of the NVCOT website, or in hand courses you have the ASHT, the American Society of Hand Therapy, classes that are CBOT approved. Remember, they have to be, if you're planning to practice in California, it has to be approved by the Board of California, right? The California Board of Occupational Therapy. It has to be approved by CBOT that this is an educational portion for that. So you already have that before you graduate, because this girl, this level 2 girl, she was interested, and now she had to get the educational portion. So she was like, what the heck, my school didn't provide. And I was like, that's kind of weird. USC definitely provided this. So yeah, that I would say do it. So you definitely need to take courses. If your school doesn't provide, ask for it and look for it. But if your school provides and you want to do these, you definitely have to take them, because it's very helpful. And honestly, during these hand courses, dude, and this is what I wanted to do. Whatever, it was like going right over my head. Like these diagnoses, I was like fish out of the water. I was like, I don't understand what the heck is going on. But once you get once you get working in there, then it makes a lot more sense. So um, if you're in class and you feel like you don't know what the heck is happening, don't feel concerned. This is normal. It happens to a lot of people. So okay, so let's see here. So hopefully that helps, Mia. So Eliza asks, for someone who's pursuing a career in OT, oops, what kind of work volunteer opportunities should one focus on to gain more exposure, field, and preparation? Okay, this is great. Awesome is, you guys are putting these like volunteering opportunities, because that is very important for your OTs, PTs applications, right? They're gonna ask, there's a portion like, did you volunteer, right? The more hours, the more better too. So um, if you guys can work as an aide, that helps a lot. Or if you can work, or if you can volunteer in clinics, I would highly recommend you guys to do so. It helps in the application process, and it gives you more exposure, right? Let's say you want to do hand therapy and you work in a hand clinic and you go, man, I don't want to do this. At least you know before you got into OT school or PT school what you want to do or you don't want to do. So try to volunteer. The applications look, schools look into that kind of stuff, especially if you're going to apply for one of the more highly competitive schools. Obviously, the more competitive, the number one schools are not the most competitive schools. USC, at least for OT school, I think they're number one at this point, but they're either 1, 2, or 3, right? USC is not the most competitive OT school to get into. It's not the hardest school to get into. The hardest school to get into is Dominguez Hills, because it's a well-established program, but it's a public school, so it's cheap. So um, if you guys should know that too, like all the private schools, dude, honestly, you can get into, like USC, for the most part, you can get into. If you have the money, you get into Stanbridge. If you have the money, you get into West Coast. You get into Loma Linda. You get into Dominguez Hills hard. So I don't think I was gonna be able to get into Dominguez Hills, honestly, if I applied. But at the time, also another thing, like I said, I'm from Brazil. I was an international student, and I was like, if I'm gonna pay international student fee, might as well just go to the best school available. So whatever I paid at Dominguez Hills, I would have paid at USC, and I got into USC, and then later I found out Dominguez Hills was much more competitive. So didn't get into that, but there are perks to going to USC. Like USC runs the OT field like in this in here. Like, dude, there's so many USC OT people around, and because it's a well-established program, it's a big program. So there's this like little like like USC or US whatever schools that have some sort of that holds a little bit of clout. But honestly, whatever school you guys go into, there'll be plenty of jobs for you to work at. So don't worry about that too. So yeah, so hopefully that helps and that answers your question, Lisa. So yeah. Um, okay, so I guess people could type in more questions. So obviously there are no more questions kind of lined up. But if there's anything else you guys want me to kind of expand on so far, I'll be more than happy to kind of tell you guys. Uh,
Do you have like an age range that you work with for your clients in like hand therapy, or do you like specifically work in like geriatrics or younger adults?
Yeah, good question. So our clinic is licensed for the ages, I think, of 13 and up, because under that is considered pediatric, and you need a different licensing. So our clinic, the Cedars Clinic, doesn't have. They are actually looking. They're hiring a per diem pediatric hand specialist. This is unstable, so let me just kind of wait a little bit. Hopefully it's okay now. So we're hiring a pediatric hand therapist because it's a little bit different too. Um, I don't know if it's fun fact. It is fun fact for me, but your carpal bones are not developed until like you're a teenager. Some of the carpal bones. So it's therapy looks a little bit different. Also, the type of fractures that kids have is a little bit different. There's one fracture called the green stick fracture, which is like if you look at a fracture, like you'll break like this, right? Like it'll break or you would like unstable displace. But kids, because their bones are still pretty soft, it will break half and the other half will kind of peel. So like it's still connected. So think of it like a rose. If you try to break a rose stem, you might not break fully and it might be connected, right? That's like a type of fracture in kids. So um, uh, we have a pediatric hand surgeon down the hallway. So
We got really laggy there for a second.
oh sorry, can you guys hear me okay? No?
Now we can hear you. Yeah.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I know. It's my internet sucks. So Time Warner is just terrible. Spectrum, whatever it is. Uh, I was just saying like pediatric is different. I see a lot of distal radius fracture, and a lot of distal radius fracture patients are old patients. They fall and they break their wrist. So I see a lot of old people, which I love it. That was actually one of the things that I wanted to see working, possibly geriatrics. So it's really fun. I think it's great, and I don't know. I like picking old people's brains. I think they have tons of experience in life, and I usually ask them good like questions about life. And then you see like younger folks that break because they are snowboarding or they punch a wall. And usually guys do stuff like that. We do stupid things like that. So it's called, and then you break your fifth metacarpal right here. It's called a boxer's fracture. Is quite common actually. So usually when someone comes in with a boxer's fracture, I already assume that person is, let's say it was their right hand. I'm assuming they're right-handed because you usually punch things with your dominant hand, and are usually guys. So I joke around. I was like, "Oh, what did you punch? And why did you like?" I was just don't tell me it was for your significant other. And they usually ask. They usually say yes and yes. So it's usually the dominant hand, and they punch things because they fought with their significant other. So it's pretty silly, but guys do stuff like that for some reason. And another kind of interesting, the women in our, so I'm the only hand therapist, guy therapist there, right? So the women in the clinic, they were asking like, why do you guys do stuff like that? And I was like, why don't you? You know? So and then they're like, do you really punch? Because like, obviously I'm very professional at work. So they're like, do you punch things, Andre? I was like, yeah, I mean I did. I don't do that anymore. But and I was like, oh, ask your husbands and see if and they all came back to like, yeah, they said they all punch things. I was like, yeah, so it's just a guy thing. It's just some guys are more violent, I guess, and they punch a wall instead of a pillow, and then they break their hand. So that's usually what happens. So yeah. Okay, so Shannon asked another one. What are some ways to build stronger rapport with your CI? Great. So CI it stands for clinical instructor, right? So CIs are usually like the overseer therapist in your field work experience. Honestly, it's be professional. That's a great question, actually. Be professional. Number one, come on time, dress appropriately, look up things, pretend that you're actually interested, right? Even if you're not, just pretend you're interested at least, because that's professionalism, right? And you might learn something that you might not think you might learn. So I went, obviously, as an OT student, you go through your immersions and you go through your physical rehab, pediatrics, mental health. So I already kind of knew I wanted to do hand therapy, but I was pretty open to experience everything. So even though I was placed one of my level 2, so like a full-time, like 3-month full-time field work, I was placed at the at gosh, I always forget their name, but it's a mental health place in Long Beach. First of all, Long Beach is so freaking far, and I was like, I don't want to go to Long Beach. Second of all, I don't want to be in mental health, and I'm there for 3 months, 5 days a week. But
What, you cut out there for a second.
is it okay now? Hopefully it's okay now. Okay,
your
so
video's a
okay,
little
I'll
frozen.
keep talking.
Okay, yeah,
Okay,
you're good.
cool. Okay, cool. Oh yeah, now it says my internet is unstable, obviously. So, but yeah, so I would say, even though you don't want to be in that field, just try to learn as much as possible, because what they'll teach you is, for me, it solidified the fact that I didn't want to do these things. I was like, I didn't think I wanted to do mental health, but going through a level 2 mental health place, I was like, for sure, I don't want to do this. Like, if I can't stand 3 months, I won't be able to stand a year, right? Not even if they pay me. So be professional. Like, I had this one, he wasn't my student, but he was a student in our clinic. Dude, the dude came like wearing jeans the first day. I was like, bro, seriously, you're wearing jeans, man? Like, come on, dude. Are you like 14 years old? Do you not know anything about professionalism? Uh, like, he'll pull out his phone in the middle of the treating session, and I was like, oh my god, this kid is like, he'll be falling asleep during the treatment, and the CI was like failing him, right? She was failing him in the midterm assessment, whatever, and he was shocked. I was like, oh my god, this kid has no freaking idea what like professionalism looks like. I mean, he was literally a kid, even though he was like in his 20s. He was like acting like a 10-year-old, So be professional, especially if you know you want to get into that field. The OT PT world are very small, so you want to make sure that you don't burn any bridges, and then you shine, right? So if you shine, people will notice you, right? So that's one way to kind of do things. So usually what I tell my students on the first day, either level 1, level 2s, I ask them, do you want to be here? And if they say no, I say, that's fine. If you don't want to be here, that's okay. All you got to do is just be professional. Do the quote unquote bare minimum to pass. Obviously, I'm not going to pass you with an A, but if you just want to cruise and you just want to sit through, that's fine. It's a lot harder, level ones. The goal is to not fall asleep. Like, it was so hard to not fall asleep as a level 1, because you're just sitting there. You're not doing anything for the most part. So, but that's a great question. You guys make sure you guys are building the right connections, and making sure that you don't burn any bridges. So yeah, that's a good one there.
All right, I think that's about as much time as we have. But thank you for coming by, Dr. Ruth. It's honestly probably one of the most interesting speakers we've had for the club so far, and for occupational therapy too. It was awesome to hear more about the field. So round of applause for you.
So here, thank you. I posted my email right there, is wu.andre@gmail.com. So if you guys have any questions, any concerns, feel free to ask me any questions, talk to me, whatever. So it looks like Jonathan has his hand raised. I don't know if I'm not a Zoom guy, so I don't know what that means.
Yeah, Jonathan, do you have a question? Oh, it seems to be just mistake.
Okay, cool.
But yeah, thank you, Dr. Wu. That was awesome to hear about everything. Hopefully we'll have you come back again for another speech or another Q&A thing, because it was honestly just amazing, super interesting.
Cool.
But yeah, thank you
Well,
for
yeah, thank you guys. You
Thank
guys
you.
are on the right field. Yeah, you guys are on the right track. This is an amazing field. Enjoy it. Like I said, have fun. Take advantage of school because it's awesome. So have fun.
Alrighty, thank you. You
Thank
guys are all
you.
free to go.